Liftoff will start in T-minus 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
Welcome back to ESA Explores. In our previous episodes, you've already met our astronaut candidates from the ESA Astronaut class of 2022. And today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to a member of our new astronaut reserve, John McFall. John is from the UK, and following the loss of his right leg in a motorcycle accident at the age of 19, he learned to run again and became a Paralympic sprinter representing Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Curious and passionate, he then embarked on a new journey and became a trauma and orthopaedic surgeon. Always keen to pick up new challenges, John is now part of the ESA Astronaut Reserve and contributes to ESA's Fly feasibility study to explore the potential for individuals just like himself to participate safely and meaningfully in space missions. So let's fly high and meet John. I'm Laura Zurmühlen, your host, joined by Denzel Lorge on the sound desk, and this is ESA Explores. Hi, John. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Nice to be here.
Yes, I'm very glad to have you here. And how are you doing?
I am good. Yeah, I've had a few days off, a little break at this part of training. So, and children's half term as well. So spent some time with the family, which has been nice.
Oh, that's really nice. So how has it been for you since you moved to Germany?
I'm having a great time over the last few months. Yeah, so I got to Germany back in June earlier this year. And then I was settling in, looking for somewhere to live, and started my work with the European Space Agency back in June. Found somewhere to live, and now I've got a house, renting a house here in sort of just east of Bonn, and my family, so my wife and 3 kids have come over, which is great. So it's great to have them over here and great to be taking them on this journey. But yeah, really enjoying my time here so far.
And how was the experience at ESA then so far? What have you done here at EAC, at the European Astronaut Center, since you came?
My time at ESA and at EAC so far has been great. I think probably one of the first things that struck me in the very early days when I got here was meeting a whole bunch of really, really passionate people, which, you know, really inspires me, because that's what, to me, makes me tick. You know, there's a whole bunch of people here because they want to be here, and they themselves are pursuing their goals and dreams to work in the space sector and explore science and you know, really broaden their expertise and skills in such an interesting and innovative area of science. And when you walk around this place, it just really oozes that, which is quite nice. All this real intrinsic motivation. And beyond that, it's great to be settling into some sort of rhythm with the team here doing the Fly feasibility study, which is great, and been working with some fantastic people and made some really good progress with the Fly feasibility study so far. So yeah, very much enjoying myself.
Oh, nice. Can you give us a little bit more details about the study then and what you've been working on so far here?
Yeah, so back during the astronaut selection process, actually, this is when the Fly study sort of all really kicked off. So whilst the selection process was going on, European Space Agency was working with NASA to do a phase 1 of the study, really, to see, okay, well, the disabilities that were advertised in the vacancy notice, looking at would there be any showstoppers relating to any of those disabilities. And that was completed by the time selection finished, and then I was selected. And the outcome of that phase of the study was there wouldn't be any showstoppers. So following my selection, and then when I arrived here at the European Astronaut Center, we've really got our teeth into phase 2 of the study. And again, led by the European Space Agency, with support of the UK Space Agency to get me over here, working closely with NASA, because a lot of the framework to actually fly to space for a long duration mission is provided by NASA. So working closely with them to really get stuck into the feasibility study. So we've done quite a lot. And essentially gone through in a systematic way the requirements for space flights and breaking it down into, so from a training point of view, both from a basic training point of view and a mission-specific training point of view, looking at what those requirements are, looking at a spacecraft requirements. So we're making the assumption that I'm going to be flying on Crew Dragon. So looking at the requirements to do that, requirements for living and working aboard the ISS, and then we've got the medical requirements and crew support requirements. So breaking it down into those 5 main areas, looking at all those requirements and talking with the team, a selected team over in NASA and a team here at the European Space Agency, and going, okay, right, this is what we need to achieve. This is a requirement. Where do we stand in terms of being able to achieve that requirement? Tick if we do. Know the answer to that at that time. If we don't, then we've had tabletop discussions where we've gone, okay, right, let's talk about this a bit more, explore it a bit more, and go, okay, maybe that could be an issue. Maybe we need to then develop a test or an assessment to look into this further. And other ones have been solved with tabletop discussions saying, actually, no, this is how he does this is how he does that, and actually that would meet the requirement. And so we're not in any way changing the requirements. We're either adapting myself or the hardware to still meet that requirement. And that section of the study also included a trip out to the States, to Houston and to Hawthorne in LA to visit SpaceX, so that we could understand those requirements much better by actually getting hands-on some of the equipment, especially things like getting on the exercise equipment, for example. Am I compatible with the exercise equipment that is required to undertake countermeasures if you're going on a long duration mission? And all the associated medical assessments and tests that you have to do before you fly, the stuff you have to do on the equipment when you do fly, and then the assessments that you need to do when you come back, all those sorts of things. That was quite important. And looking at, the compatibility of my current setup and my ability to do, actually, probably one of the key things is being able to do emergency procedures. And that's, I think, for a lot of people with disabilities, this is where some of the issues are going to be around, is do we meet the basic requirements to undertake the emergency procedures required? So, looking beyond this study, that would be quite an interesting thing to look at and look into more disabilities and how we could meet those requirements.
What would be an example of an emergency situation?
Good question. So a really simple example would be there's an emergency on the launch pad. So you're in the capsule, you're ready to go. There is an emergency where you've got to do an emergency egress out of the capsule, down the crew access arm, into a basket that's on a cable that then runs down to the ground and then into an armored personnel carrier to drive that away. So we discovered very early on that actually, if I'm going to be able to achieve that, I have to wear a prosthesis. So then the next step is, okay, well, if I've got to wear a prosthesis, that prosthesis needs to be compatible with being worn inside the spacesuit, inside the spacecraft, and also compatible to be not just present, but potentially used up on the International Space Station as well. So hardware certification becomes a big part of that, important part of that. So that's one example. Another example, performing CPR on orbit on the International Space Station. Can I stabilize myself and brace myself sufficiently to apply enough pressure to an individual to perform adequate CPR? So, for example, look at someone who is a wheelchair user, spinal cord injury or whatever. Could we set up a system to anchor them to the floor quickly enough so that they could start delivering effective CPR? Because one of the techniques to do CPR...
Yeah, because you float away otherwise.
Exactly.
How does it work?
And one of the techniques that we practice on parabolic flights is actually you go upside down above the patient or the person who requires CPR, and you put your feet, or in my case, foot, on the ceiling, if you like, if you can call it the ceiling, and then you put your arms above your head and use your feet to brace yourself so that you can push with your arms.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you are not using your legs and you're a wheelchair user, difficult to to adapt that. So we need to think about things like that. And again, if you think about a wheelchair user, from the first example I gave you, being able to do an emergency egress from the capsule down the crew access arm into the baskets and that sort of stuff. So that, that would be really interesting scenario to try and work around and come up with solutions to improve accessibility to space. And those are the sorts of things that are going to need looking at in the future.
That's really interesting. That's a lot of things that maybe you wouldn't think about in the first place and that have to be adapted, like you say. You mentioned health and exercise on the space station and in space. And from your background, as you're a medical doctor as well, and you're a Paralympian athlete, how do you think that these experiences help you or guide you with what you're doing right here, right now?
I think I'm quite lucky that I have such a varied background. I've been an athlete, so I've been an elite athlete. I know what elite physical exercise is like, and I know that I can cope with a lot of exercise, but doing it as an amputee as well. Before I did medicine, I had a background in sports and exercise science, particularly interested in biomechanics and gait analysis, so looking at walking and movement, and that gave me a really good understanding of how to get the best out of wearing a prosthesis and how I move and how I can optimize my efficiency with movement. And then obviously working as a medical doctor, I understand the fundamental principles behind health and the way we work, and especially in the context of exercise and space flight, the effects of microgravity on human physiology, cardiac function, muscle mass, bone density, those sorts of things. So this kind of unique set of skills of being able to bring them all together, and I think they complement this study really well. And it gives me the ability to not be a passive subject matter in this process.
So they're not just trying things out with you,
exactly.
You're also like helping.
I'm slightly less
own...
of a guinea pig. Yeah. I'm kind of, I actually, my experiences help the team, I hope helps the team direct the study and help us navigate and ask the right questions and explore the right things to come up with the solution. So yeah, it's I think it's been pretty helpful, the varied background that I've had in this study.
So as an athlete, what is your view on health and exercise in space then?
Well, it's, if you're going on a long duration mission to the International Space Station, and any mission in microgravity beyond 30 days, it's really important to do physical exercise as countermeasures to maintain your health. But I think part of the concern of undertaking a study like this is, can we find someone with a physical disability that will be able to cope with the demands of physical exercise in order to maintain their health and to undertake those countermeasures. And I think you've got to look at it. For me, with my background, it's relatively straightforward because I'm very active and have been an athlete anyway, so it's relatively straightforward. But if I was thinking about the bigger picture and the future, you look at other disabilities. Maybe short stature or a wheelchair user from a spinal cord injury or something like that. The requirements are very different. But then if you're a wheelchair user, for example, and on Earth, you're not relying on your legs for your mobility, do you need to maintain muscle mass and bone density well, you won't be able to anyway, but you would have to have some sort of equipment so that you can train and exercise your upper body, so an arm bike, as well as doing resistance exercises with your upper limbs and that sort of stuff. So the requirement is still there, but it's different. But we know that if you are going to stay in space for more than 30 days, really, in order to thrive when you come back and cope with the demands of coming back, you need to stay physically fit. And it's something I'm quite looking forward to doing.
Life on a space station requires daily exercise to limit the physical effects of weightlessness. So, crew members on the International Space Station dedicate up to 2 hours every day to various exercises on a treadmill, a resistive exercise device, or a cycling ergometer. These workouts help to maintain bone density, cardiovascular health, and muscle strength, ensuring astronauts can readapt to gravity on Earth when they return. So, next time you complain about hitting the gym, just be glad you're not doing it while floating in space. I was just going to ask, so were all the physical exercises that you're doing here right now your favorite ones, or do you have any other things that you've seen or did here that you really liked?
Well, I think one thing that I would miss if I was in space would probably be swimming, and that feeling of being in the water. But hey, I mean, if you get to do EVA, if you get to do a spacewalk, then that might be as close to diving or being in the water as you can get. But I do quite a bit of running and cycling here on Earth, so I'm quite happy to do those on the space station. But going forward, we're looking at developing other exercise equipment that it's not running. Traditionally, it's been running and cycling and resistance equipment, but there are other pieces of equipment being looked at to develop that take up less space, train more muscle groups, and deliver a different type of exercise intensity. So that will be something interesting to look at, and how people with disabilities can use those pieces of equipment in the future as well.
I was just going to ask, so it's for everybody that they're developing these new equipments, or is it focused on astronauts with a physical disability?
So I think if you're developing a piece of equipment, you're never going to be able to develop a piece of equipment for all people with all types of physical disabilities. So this is where you come into the realms of, we have to select a small part of the spectrum of physical disabilities to start with, because the numbers of pieces of equipment that you might have to need to cater for all people is quite difficult. There's one piece of equipment which is being developed, which is sort of like a high intensity, a HIIT sort of type thing, where you stand on a machine and you do basically repetitive jump squats, which has been tested on parabolic flight with a below knee amputee. Looking at that myself, I wonder how I would get on as an above knee amputee, because jumping and squatting is something that's quite difficult as an above knee amputee. So even those sorts of things. But you're right, these sorts of things have to be considered in the design and development phase of any equipment that is new, and that's really where the focus has to be. Listen, guys, if we're going to make equipment, it needs to be, can we look at making equipment for as many users as possible without sacrificing the quality for everybody as well?
And so in general, is there anything else you're very much looking forward to, or for the future of space exploration?
I'm really looking forward to seeing how this study goes. And it's going to be interesting, as I think not just the results of the study, but if someone with a physical disability flies, what is beyond that? And that's what I'm really interested in. And there is a lot of talk about it. If you're looking at lunar surface habitats and those sorts of things, developing infrastructure and systems and equipment that can cater for people with a disability. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the legacy of this will be.
Yeah, especially as we're looking forward to more long-term duration missions, and as you said, in the future maybe to the moon and further.
And beyond, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so living on a space station, and then maybe at some point working on the lunar surface.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe a little bit about your work over here or with the team and colleagues. I mean, you already mentioned that it was a very welcoming moment when you came here. So how did you enjoy working with it's a very international team over here. So how was that for you? Culture shock or not so much?
Not at all, no, not a culture shock. I found really interesting during the selection process is you come to each stage of the selection, certainly in the early stages. I remember being really struck by, it's, hi, my name's Johan. I'm French, but I live in Switzerland. Hi, my name's Jens. I'm Norwegian, but I live in France and work in France. And this was like so commonplace on mainland Europe. For people to be working all across Europe, irrespective of where they're from. You get this a lot less in the UK. But I've traveled quite a lot in my life. And met many different people from many parts of the world. So certainly not a culture shock for me. What I also really like about being here and being with the other ASCANs is it's a lovely group of ASCANs. And I love the way that each candidate brings their own history, their own background, their own experiences, from astrophysicists, neuroscientists, engineers, pilots, everyone, but not just, that's just their professions. And then you look at their hobbies and you've got, kite surfers and balloon flyers and all sorts of things like that. So it's just really nice to have this diverse group of people with diverse interests.
So what are your diverse interests?
I don't know.
Do you have any special hobbies?
No, I think I'm probably quite boring and mainstream compared to that. So I think my interests and hobbies are, I love running.
I was going to ask you. You still run?
Yeah, I still run, and I run. Running for me is like my awake dreaming. It's what I do to help me process my thoughts. I love going out and hearing my feet pounding the ground on my own. No music. I don't listen to music when I run. Just my breathing and nature around me and a bit of headspace to go out and think. I really enjoy mountain biking when I have the time. It's a bit harder to get out and mountain bike properly, to have the time, because it takes up a little bit more time. But those are the things I enjoy doing.
Yeah, nice. But then to finish off, maybe just if you have any other long-term goals. I know you already mentioned the study and that you hope this will develop further. Is there anything else you will hope to achieve, either yourself or for your future career?
Long-term goals for me are, there's probably a couple of long-term goals. I'd love to fly. Obviously, I'd love to fly, and I'd love to fly on a long-duration mission. And if possible, if my career permits it, and there is the support there, I would love to go beyond Leo and go to the moon. That would be fantastic. I would like there to be a legacy from this study and from this adventure, but also not just necessarily for people with disabilities, but also with this, I want to reach as many people as I can, to give them the confidence to make decisions that interest them and please them and inspire them to go out there and find stuff that they really enjoy doing. And if I can do that, if I can reach as many people as I can with that message, just encourage them to ask themselves the right questions of, what do I want to do in life? Take opportunity and go out there and enjoy life. For me, that would be one of my major goals. Amazing.
And so I hope we can reach a lot of people through this as well and get your message across. And thank you so much. It was really nice having you here.
Thank you very much.
Very inspiring and wise words by John. I can't wait to see what exciting adventures lie ahead for him. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about John, the Fly Study, and our astronaut class of 2022, head over to the official ESA Exploration blog at blogs.esa.int/exploration. Connect with John on social media, where he's at IM5toes on X and Astro_John McFall on Instagram. Join the conversation on X at ESA Spaceflight using the hashtag ESA Explores. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share on your favorite podcast platform and on ESA's YouTube channel. Stay tuned for our next episodes, and thank you for listening to ESA Explores.